Hello, and welcome to Focal Points. I'm Ralph Barker, it's Laura McCullough. Hopefully you saw our first program while we kind of explained why we're doing this and how we're doing this. But we want to challenge you to think and to learn to think biblically, which is a lot different than quoting scripture out of context. It's learning to reason from scripture. There's a whole other world out there, and we're exploring it. And as I said on the first program, we're going to talk about topics we talk about, but we don't talk about always with the same perspective. So we're going to challenge even ourselves. Laura and I don't agree on everything. That makes it fun. We don't get mad. We don't kick each other. We just disagree, and that's fine. And you can disagree. We have an email, and if you want to contact us, give us some comments, some questions, or ideas for future programs. It's Focal Points, that's P-O-I-N-T-S at the end, focalpoints@gmail.com.
Focal Points channel.
I'm sorry, I never get it right.
I'm going to have a card to hold up for all the videos. It's Focal Points channel at gmail.com.
We got it. The lights are still shining. Is my head shiny still?
No, your
makeup.
good.
Makeup. First, my head was shiny, so my wife powdered my head.
Welcome to our adventure.
Anyway, we're having fun. We decided on the first two programs, after the first one that we introduced everything and why we're doing this, we're going to talk about heaven and hell. Sounds like
or the lack thereof.
Yeah, or the lack thereof. That sounds like two simple subjects. We talk about it all the time. But, what is heaven? I think most of us have a concept that we get from either Christian art,
right,
from movies. In fact, anytime you see a movie, it's always people walking through some kind of fog. You ever notice that, walking towards an angel or a light or something? Because we can't conceive of what heaven is. And I don't know, I've read a lot of books on near-death experiences,
yes,
which are very, very interesting. If you hadn't read a book on them, just a catalog of different people's experiences, it's really interesting because there's a lot of commonality in them. Even if they're from another country or another religion, they talk about a person they meet or personage, and they don't always know what the name is, but we would think it's Jesus that they're meeting. And one thing that really shocked me kind of was the fact that one man said that after he died, he went into judgment. We talk about there's a man's appointed unto die once and then to judgment.
yes.
He said every thought, action, feeling that he ever had in his entire life, he saw in like a split second. And it's just overwhelming with his sin.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, I don't even want to know some of the things I've done in my life.
Well, so, and so that not to jump into it just yet, but that begs the question, if the person is experiencing a reflection of their life, is he experiencing a snapshot of judgment, or is he experiencing a snapshot of conviction? Because obviously nothing surprises God. And is it for the purpose of returning to a changed life? And is that actually reflective of something that we would encounter in an afterlife, or are these shared experiences something intended as a witness?
That's a good question.
In the spiritual, so.
Well, the question he left with, Jesus asked him, "What have you done for me?"
Mm-hmm.
I mean, after all that, and you see that, what have you done for me?
And that's reflective of the scriptures when it talks about that many will cry out for what they have done, but he will say, "I've never knew you."
I never knew you.
Right. So it's reflective of something that we know Jesus has said in Scripture, has been quoted as saying, and so in a parable form. But then one of the questions that I always have when I read into those accounts, because I've done the same, my husband and I have done some study into some of those different accounts, and one of the questions that I always have come up is, are they encountering the person of Christ? Are they encountering an angel? Because we have so many accounts of people in the scriptures, because one of the things we said in the first program, we're always going to go back to scripture. We're always going to let scripture define scripture. We have lots of people who were having out-of-body experiences or experiences in what I would call the second heaven, encountering things in the spiritual realm that were being guided by an angel. We have the vision of John in Revelation. We have the experiences of Daniel. We have Ezekiel. We have numerous people throughout the scriptures who are seeing and experiencing things that have angels present. And so that's one of the questions that I would have in digging into the scripture. Now, the idea that Jesus himself is present, I'm not opposed to that in any way, and I'm not sure that it affects our definition of heaven.
Yeah.
One of the questions that can define our understanding of heaven is, are we talking about something that someone experiences immediately upon death?
Mhm.
Are we talking about something that occurs in a later timeline, as in some of the scriptures that we have in Revelation? When we talk about heaven, there's basically three heavens described in scripture.
Right. Mhm.
The first heaven being the sky, the clouds, the stars, the physical things that you see when you look up. The second heaven being the realm where angels and unclean spirits operate, that basically overlays our physical existence. And then the third heaven being where the throne of God is, because that's something that has to be traveled to. That's something.
And it's where John went.
Yes.
Third heaven. He
Yes.
mentioned specifically third heaven.
It does.
I remember when I was in the military and I just became a Christian, and my background actually came out of psychic and occultic type things, and she came out of more of an agnostic perspective.
Well, both. I was searching for the creator. I believed in a creator that was instilled in me, but I did definitely travel through some pagan and occultic roads trying to find him. So.
Well, I went when I was in the Air Force at the time, and seemed like every few days, I'd read the Bible. I go to the chaplain on base, and I think they started drawing numbers for me. He's coming again. You want him today? I'm serious. I was probably driving him crazy. And I asked this one pastor. I said, "Where is heaven? I mean, what is heaven? Where is heaven?" And this was the simplest answer. He says, "Heaven is where Jesus is. Wherever that is, where's home? It's wherever you are, and where Justin is, your husband, Susan, and me, and my wife." But is heaven a physical place that really has streets of gold and pearly gates and all that? Or is it a place that's like on earth? A lot of like Jehovah's Witnesses, for one, who most consider to be a cult, they believe that heaven is on earth. God creates the earth and we live on the earth.
Well, but there's a lot. Well, and the thing is that there's a lot of scripture to support that concept. So while there are other aspects we might not agree with regarding specifically some of the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses, that concept specifically has a tremendous amount of scriptural support, because it does say that the New Jerusalem comes to the earth.
To the earth.
It says, so if we expect Christ to return to the earth, it then says that the New Jerusalem comes here, and all the physical descriptions, the foundations of precious stones and the gates made of pearl, which is where we get pearly gates, 12 gates into the city of the New Jerusalem. Do we believe those descriptions to be literal or metaphorical? Because there isn't any scriptural reference for people going to heaven and staying there. There's also, one of the things that one might question in regard to this is the state of the dead, because there's a tremendous amount of scriptural evidence for the idea of a person being asleep during that time. And then some of the verses that we use to support, which we might actually devote, an entire segment to a list of those verses, because we're trying to maintain about a 10 to 12 minute discussion, and the verses that describe us going somewhere else, some of those can be read a little bit differently than is traditionally presented.
Well, also you got Paul says to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord, and then on the other hand, as you're talking about, there's a theological doctrine called soul sleep,
right?
That we sleep until the resurrection, and there's some proof for that. That's another thing I found in recent years, I guess, is I've been a Christian about 50 years, and I've had my ups and downs, and I changed theology. I heard a pastor on the radio one time say, "I've been a Christian for 30 years and I've never changed my mind about anything." I said, "That's sad. I mean, that's really sad. I've changed my mind about everything." I mean, from where I was 50 years ago to where I'm totally different. But I can sit here and for 15, 20 minutes, whatever length of time you want to choose, I can make a case for, let's just talk about end times theology. I can make one for a premillennial view. I can make one for an amillennial view. I can make one for a postmillennial view. They can't all be true, but you can find scriptures to support each, which I think God did on purpose, so we keep talking about it. It's not like just getting a book and get the rule book. Oh, that's it. Okay, we got it.
So in the Shema, which we mentioned in the first little clip about the verses talking about loving God with our mind, in the Shema it says that as you walk along the way, as you lie down, as you rise up, that as you sit in your house, that you're supposed to talk about the word, right? And so that's one of the things. A lot of times we get down on ourselves because we're not reading 20 minutes of scripture a day, or we're not reading a chapter of scripture a day. But this type of discussion, talking with other believers about the ideas in the Bible, because we have to remember historically, everybody didn't own a Bible. Everyone didn't have a Torah scroll. This was a precious commodity. And so this that we're talking about, reasoning with other believers about complex ideas and our thoughts on them, is included in the idea of being in the Word, because we're being in the Word with other
I know
believers.
when I was with American Vision Ministry for 23 years, I traveled the country. I spoke in every type of church you can imagine just about. And universally almost, people would come up to me afterwards and said, "You made me think. I did my job. Even if you get mad, I did my job. You thought." And I'm serious, that is a lost art today. We're so comforted or so content to be spoon-fed from the pastor. And I'm sure your pastor's fine, but he's not always right. I was doing Christian radio for 4 years, talk radio, and I disagreed with Charles Stanley. Oh my gosh, I disagreed with Charles Stanley. And this guy called up and attacked me. "How dare you?" And we talked for a couple of minutes and went through it. And at the end of it, he finally said, "Well, I guess you're right. I even disagree with myself sometimes." So he let me go. But he was just so upset that I would disagree with Charles Stanley. So we
disagree with that.
Yeah, we can disagree about that. But that's the point. No one has all the answers.
No, and I think that as this segment comes to a close, what we might do for the next segment is pull out a few of those verses and kind of talk about what they reflect, regarding the state of heaven, because we didn't even talk about hell. That's a whole other.
Well, yeah, we take this, like these segments will be short, but we can do a series.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if you want to end this one, maybe you could sing the Battle Hymn of Republic.
He's joking.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you the next time. Tell your friends, focalpointschannel@gmail.com.
Yes.
God bless.